Hello and welcome. My name is Paul McGuinness. I am the head of solutions for Europe at Megaport. I'm based out of the London office. I've been with Megaport for 6 years, and I'll take you through this Megaport live tech drop-in session today. So thank you for joining me on this Friday morning. You can see my contact details there. So this session is going to be a fairly short session. We're going to go through just some basics initially, just doing a level set about Megaport, and then we'll go in and talk about hybrid cloud and then give you a live demo of creating services. We'll also take some questions in the Q&A if you joined us on the Zoom call. If you joined us on LinkedIn, then please do reach out to me later. You can see my email address there. Okay, like I said, just to have a level set, who is Megaport and what do we offer? Well, we are a network as a service provider. We've deployed in over 850 locations around the world. And this allows enterprises, businesses, big and small, to connect into Megaport's private network and then use that functionality for various different purposes. It could be that you want to have private connectivity between global locations around the world, and you can easily do that in minutes across our network. Or something else that's really popular is connectivity into the cloud. So being able to have a private connection all the way into the major cloud providers, Google, Microsoft Azure, AWS, Oracle, IBM, etc. And plus over 350 partners that we have on our marketplace as well. All of the provisioning is done by you, the customer, the end user. You can do that through Megaport's portal, and you can also do that through automation if you want to use Megaport's APIs, or if you want to use Terraform as well. Again, this is private connectivity. So once you access the Megaport network, then you can get to any other point globally on the network, literally in minutes. You can also access our network through an internet connection through IPsec tunnels as well, by using our virtual edge product. We're not covering that today. Okay, like I said, we deploy in all of these locations around the world, and we make it look like a uniform service. So if you provision a port in Tokyo, in San Jose, or in Frankfurt, they look and feel the same. You provision those services through automation or the portal, and then it's available for you to use immediately. Connected to cloud, interconnect between data centers. You can also spin up virtual routers in over 90 locations around the world, and also virtual firewalls and SD-WAN hubs as well. Okay, so today's topic is going to be hybrid cloud. So we're going to talk about rapidly connecting on-prem, colo, and clouds. So just before I move into the demo, let's just look at what it really is and how customers get on board with Megaport for hybrid cloud. So here's a diagram showing a typical connectivity solution. So in this case, a customer may have a location inside a data center, or they may have networking coming into a data center, and they want to get access to the clouds privately. So what you do is you go into the Megaport portal, you spin up a Megaport port at either 1 gig, 10 gig, or 100 gig. 1 gig is not very common these days. Most people are using 10 gig, and 100 gig is much more popular. But you spin up this port inside our portal. It is then available to use it immediately. If there was someone there already to connect into this port, you could start using it straight away. Once you provision the port, you'll get a letter of authorization showing you the exact demarcation point for this port. And all you have to do then is to order a cross connect from your rack location inside the data center across to the Megaport location. And you do that through your data center provider. Now, it may be that you're not in the same data center as us, one of our 850, you may be somewhere else. So you might have to get a last mile connection, a campus cross connect, or a metro cross connect to get into that port. So the port is the demarcation point for Megaport. But once you have provisioned that port, you are then multi-cloud enabled. okay? The port is enabled. The provisioning to multi-cloud is in your control. So you can spin up 10 gig connections and even 20 gig to Google, to any of the providers shown here, and lots of other partners that we have, including, Nutanix and Wasabi and Salesforce and other providers on our marketplace. Again, it's under your control. You can oversubscribe the port as well if you want to, and provision more than the port is physically capable of. So this type of connectivity allows you to have large amounts of data moving from on-prem to cloud and vice versa. So it's secure because it's private connectivity. If you want to encrypt over this, you can do that as well. And you've got an MTU of 9100 available to you. And use cases can include things like having, let's say an Oracle XSCC database, and you're connecting that into OCI. You can do that through this port, while at the same time connecting to other clouds using their private connectivity options. So for Google Cloud, it's Partner Interconnect. For Microsoft Azure, it's ExpressRoute. And for AWS, that's Direct Connect. Okay, enough of the slides. Let's move across and get a demo. So I'm going to come out of presentation mode. I'm going to pop into the Megaport portal. So we're in our portal here. I'm just going to reset out. And here we have a view of, this is a single account view that we got. And this is actually a demo portal that we use for Megaport demos. And we can see some services that are provisioned around the world in various locations. And these are live services. So let's just move back across to Europe, and I'm going to provision, let's just zoom in and provision some services into the London area. So let's go down, we'll zoom into this area over here in the Docklands, and let's have a look at some data centers over here. We can see we got some connections already. So in here in Global Switch, we can see that this data center has 100 gig, 10 gig, and 1 gig ports. It has Megaport Cloud routers and also the virtual edges there that support virtual firewalls, SD-WAN hubs, virtual routing through Cisco, etc. So from here, we can go ahead and provision these services. We could provision Megaport virtual edges, Megaport Cloud routers if we want to, but today we're just going to create a port. So by selecting the port, it then takes us into the options here. We can use the pull down menu, and actually this page, we can provision everything for this port. So let's just create a 10 gig. I'm going to just copy across. I'll give it a name. So you're on the Megaport live session, and this is our page. We could choose to make this port available on the Megaport marketplace. So if you wanted to be on Megaport's marketplace, you can mark this as public. It will then appear there under your profile, and then other parties on the Megaport network will be able to request permission to access you. They have to go through a secure protocol to get through first, but you will be visible on the marketplace. That's really what that does. You've got a service level reference that you can add. It can be anything that you want. And then you've got the term options here for this service. If you want port diversity, you can choose to create a diverse pair of ports, and that will drop one into blue and another one into red. So you'll have two physical ports in that data center in separate availability zones. There's also an option if you have an existing port to create a diverse port from that. You can also lag ports together. So you can create link aggregation groups, and you can add up to 8 ports into that link aggregation group to get greater bandwidth inside a lag. So that's all that you have to provision. You add the port, and we can now see that the port is in here, and it's over here in the order side. So we can go ahead and order that service. So that is going through deployment, and we can see the port here. We just zoom in a little bit. And the port is here. And we can see now that this is waiting for resource. but already we've got the service ID for this port. So the service identifier is what you use when you talk to us about this port. This is really the key piece of information that identifies this service. It's also an identifier that we have on all of our services. So whether you're creating a virtual cross connect or a virtual router, you'll always have one of these service identifiers. You can also lock services. You can go in and change some details on it. You can drill into the port as well and see things like usage, logs, billing as well, and provision services against it. Okay, but let's leave the map view and move across to the service list. So we've got lots of different services in here from other users in this portal. But this is the port that I've just created. You can see it's fallen into the diversity zone red. And I can see that it's now being allocated or it's being allocated the resources. And quite soon we will see the letter of authorization appear at the top of this port as well. Now, the first time a port is provisioned, you can see that we just surface these tiles at the bottom here that just kind of leads you into provisioning the next step from this port. So creating a service from the port into something else. When you've got your port already connected, like I said before, you are multi-cloud enabled. Your port can have up to 100 services allowed on that port. So you can have 100, what we call virtual cross connects into various different clouds, for example. And let's go ahead and just create a connection into one of the clouds to show you what that looks like. So over here on my Microsoft Azure account, I've created a express route earlier. Let's just pop into that. We can see that this is an express route. It's in not provisioned status. It's in London. It's 1 gig. It's connected into, or it's associated into the UK South region, and it's enabled there. So if I just take the service key from that, you can see the different peerings here at the bottom, private and Microsoft peering. Take that back to the portal. We can go ahead and just click on the Microsoft Azure tile here. And straight away, the first thing that it asks me for, it gives me links to documentation, but it asks me for the service key that we've just copied across from the Azure portal. Now, what's happened is we've made some API calls to Microsoft, check that the key's valid, check that it's not being used. So here we've got a primary and secondary option, and you can see the zone information for the other side of this connection as well. This one happens to be in LD5 because I chose London for the location for the express route. If I'd chosen London 2, then it would have landed in Telehouse North. And the reason for that is that those are the locations where Microsoft has decided to place their MSEE routers in London. Okay, so clicking next, I give this a name and I'm gonna call it the same, but I'm gonna Azure Express route. So the key already populates the rate limit for this because I chose 1 gig when creating the express route. I can then give it the preferred A-end VLAN ID. Put in 200 there. So this is the VLAN ID that will be presented on the port in Global Switch that I created earlier. We've got the different term options there. We've also got a way to simplify the VLANs here. And I won't go into too much detail on this call, but if you want to use 2 peerings on your express route, so private peering and Microsoft peering, private peering to get to your VNets and Microsoft peering to get to public Microsoft services like Power BI, for example, then you can have both of them running within the same circuit. But to do that, you need to use Q&Q. Now, a lot of our customers don't want to do 2 peerings at the same time. The majority of customers want to just use private peering to access their VNets inside Microsoft Azure. So if they don't want to use that Q&Q option, you can click this button here. Megaport will handle the Q&Q for you, and we'll simplify that and change it back into an 802.1q tag for you. So We can specify the Azure peering VLAN here, and then we'll just match that inside the Azure portal later. So that's all you have to provision. Nice and easy. You add that VXC over here on the left, and then you can just go and order that. Okay, so it validates the order. Again, we're making a call across to Microsoft for that, and we're just checking that the key is valid. And now when I go deploy, it makes another call to Microsoft, checks that everything is still valid, and it is consuming the primary aspect of the key. Okay, so that service is deployed, goes through deployment, takes a couple of minutes before that changes on the Microsoft portal from not provisioned to provisioned. But in the meantime, let's create a connection into AWS. So let's have a look at the AWS console. So in here, we have no connections provisioned right now. So it's just, there's nothing provisioned in here in my AWS Direct Connect area. Under virtual interfaces, we do have one in there used by somebody else. But one point I'm just going to call out is the account ID is something that we'll need to create the connection inside AWS. Okay, so back on our port, and let's just filter out. So I'm going to filter out the other services. We've got our port, we've got our connection to Microsoft Azure, and now I'm going to create another connection to AWS. Before I do that, let me just run you through all of the things that you can connect to this port. Okay, so you can, obviously, you can do cloud. We'll do that in a second. You can create a private VXC that takes you into any other element on the Megaport network. So this port is in London. If I have a port in Sydney, I can create a private VXC to that port in Sydney at 10 gigabits per second in 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes. I can add Megaport internet to this port. So instead of procuring internet locally, you can use this port and get Megaport internet through this port to your on-prem rack. You can use internet exchange. This is not really for everyone, but this is where you're meeting in an internet exchange and you're able to communicate with other parties and peer with the other parties on that internet exchange. Another option is Megaport Marketplace. I've mentioned that a few times already. This is where our partners and users can make your ports visible so that they will appear on the Megaport Marketplace, and then they can be consumed by other users of the network. And then finally, we've got Enter Service Key. And this is where you are able to swap a key with another party who are also using Megaport, and then you can create a connection between each other. This allows you to create an ecosystem on the Megaport network between you and your partners or you and your customers without being public anywhere. So you're using a private network to create high bandwidth connectivity globally between you and your partners using private service keys. Anyway, let's go back to creating a connection into AWS. We support hosted VIF and hosted connection. These days, hosted connection is by far the most popular because it allows you to reach Transit Gateway. Now, even though this port is in London in Global Switch, I can go to any cloud on-ramp that I want to for AWS around the world. So we've got all of these connected. So let's just connect this into Germany. So if I choose one of the ports that we have with AWS going into a red zone there in Frankfurt, I can click next. I can give it a name, and we'll call this a VXC to AWS FRA. We can select the rate limit for this. So we can choose a 1 gig connection. We can choose the state that we want to have this connection in as it comes up. And again, we can choose a VLAN ID for this service. So if we did not select a VLAN ID, Megaport will allocate one for you, one that is available. Again, you've got your term options here. And then on the next page, this is where we're going to add that account ID, which allows Megaport to then direct this interface into AWS. Clicking next, we get a summary. We add the VXC, and then we order it. So it validates the order, and it orders now. Okay, and it deploys. So that's now going through deployment. I'll really quickly show you one other thing. Let's just actually pop into the Azure console first. And we can now see that this is provisioned in status. After a few minutes, the options down here for the different peerings will be available. So if I pop in here to private peering, this will become available after a few minutes. You can then put in your ASN of your on-prem device, your primary and secondary subnets, and then the VLAN ID, and this would be 100 to match what I provisioned on the other Megaport side. You can also add your shared key there as well. But you can see that is going through nicely. On the AWS side, this takes a little bit of time to come through, so that will appear there in a minute or two. But going back to the portal, I'm just going to show you one other connection, and it's a private VXC, and I'm going to connect into something else on the Megaport network. So let's filter this down to the US, and I noticed a colleague of mine, Dan, who's also running a Megaport live session in the US, has a port over in Cyrus One in Dallas. So I can just give this a name, and this is a port to port connection. And we can also call this Megaport Global WAN. And again, we can create a connection 10 gig and have that there. We can provision our VLAN IDs for that, for the AN and BN. And then that's all we have to do to create that service. We add the VXC and go through the usual process again. You order it and it becomes live within a few minutes. Okay, so now you can see that we provisioned three services, well, four services. We've got the port in Global Switch. We've got a connection into Microsoft Azure in London. We've also got a hosted connection across to AWS Direct Connect in Frankfurt, Germany. And then we've provisioned a private VXC from London to Dallas. And all of these are at 1 gig. We could create them higher or lower if we want to as well. If you don't use a term on the VXCs, you can turn them up and down. You do have to obey the cloud rules as well and talk to a solution architect about those. Let's take a look at AWS. Yes, there's our connection. We can go in to that connection. We can accept it, confirm that we're accepting it. And then the next step, once that would become, the state would become available, you would go ahead and create a virtual interface. So that is it for the demo. Let me just go across and see if we got any questions on that. Okay, so yeah, we've got a question here about what happens if I'm not in the same data center as Megaport. As I mentioned earlier in the slides, if you're not in the same DC, you might need a campus cross connect or a metro cross connect or a last mile from another provider. Megaport can recommend local loop providers for you, depending on where you are around the world. So, you know, the fact that we're deployed in over 800 data centers and growing, we're deploying a lot more all of the time, then the chances are you are in one of the Megaport data centers already or in a campus situation. Another question here, can I create services with more bandwidth than the port can support? Yes, so you can oversubscribe the port if you want to. So for example, on this port, I've got a 10 gig port and I created three 1 gig connections. I could have created three 10 gig connections and oversubscribe the port 3 times. It's up to you to look out for the traffic passing through the port because the physical data rate is 10 gigabits per second. So traffic will be dropped if you oversubscribe and then try to pass too much traffic. And then last question here is, can I have the Megaport port configured as an access port? And the answer is yes, if you want to, but you can only have a single VLAN on that port. You can use, you know, add additional tags transparently to Megaport inside that if you want to, and some customers do that, but it's up to you. It's typical to have your port tagged and then just use the up to 100 VXCs on that. So with that, I've got all of the questions taken care of. I hope you've enjoyed that session and found it useful. Please join us again next week at the same time. That's 9 a.m. UK and Ireland and 10 a.m. CET for another session where one of the European solution architects will take you through a live demo of Megaport and talk about another topic. Thank you and see you then.